So I start with asking, what are Unitarian values? So give me a yes if you think world peace.
Yes.
Sustainability.
Yes.
Spirituality.
Hallelujah.
Transformation.
Yes.
Community.
Yes.
Organic living.
Yes.
Consciousness.
Yes.
Expression.
Yes.
Compassion.
Yes.
Mind expansion.
Oh, yeah.
Congratulations, you're all hippies. Those are, I came across this list on Facebook, and it said, think hippie thoughts. But to get closer to the reality of the organization and their core values, and I found this on the internet, despite the lack of a creed, Unitarianism does not allow members to believe anything. All Unitarians support freedom of religious thought. Yes. Base their religious ideas on rational thought rather than external authority. I would quibble about rational, perhaps. Form their religious principles from conscience, thinking, and life's experience, and tolerate a wide range of religious ideas, including humanism. And I think what draws me to the ideas of, and when I say Unitarianism, of course I mean Unitarianism, Universalism. In the, I guess the 1700s, when the mainline Protestant denominations were developing, and I would include Congregationalism and Unitarianism and Universalism as maybe being a more liberal or progressive wing of that spectrum. But I'll tell you a little story. I was talking to a friend of mine, educated woman, telling her that I was doing something at the Unitarians. And she says, well, what's Unitarians? And I told her briefly. And she says, oh, well, I thought it always had something to do with Arians. And I said, really? And I didn't say anything rude or anything like that, but I don't know. I guess not everybody is as interested in religion as some other people. But I was surprised by that. Perhaps, again, this is an educated woman, but perhaps she didn't understand that Aryan had kind of negative connotations. I don't know. But what I like is the individual freedom that is permitted in the more progressive wing of the religious spectrum. And Unitarians believe that everyone has the right to seek truth and meaning for themselves, using their intellect, their conscience, and their own experience of life. And the best setting for finding religious truth and meaning is a community that welcomes each individual for themselves and complete with their beliefs, doubts, and questions. I'm sorry, the English teacher there stopped and said, each individual themselves. So anyway, there you go. I know. I didn't write this, though. I just cut and pasted. So the press of the UUA for going on to 100 years is Beacon Press in Boston. As early as the 1820, there was a printing arm of the Unitarian organization, And then in 1854, Beacon Press was founded. And I don't know if you're familiar with Beacon Press, but I became aware of it because of a poet whom I admire, Robert Bly, had several books published by Beacon Press, one on Kabir and another on Mirabai. I think a few other books also. And of course, the poet Mary Oliver has since about 2004 every year had a book published. Some things that some transcendentalists said that appeal to me. Here's Thoreau. Rather than love, than money, than fame, give me truth. Unless your heart, your soul, and your whole being are behind every decision you make, the words from your mouth will be empty and each action will be meaningless. Truth and confidence are the roots of happiness, says Waldo Emerson. Do not follow where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail, says Emerson. And Margaret Fuller, men, for the sake of getting a living, forget to live. That's why I retired in my mid-20s and traveled around and worked as a musician for about 15 years and had a high old time, high in quotations there. And then at the age of 40 had met Kathy and we were going to have a baby and it was time for me to go to work. But now I make a living doing what I love, which is talking about language. And particularly in April during National Poetry Month, whether my students like it or not. April 18th of this month is Carry a Poem in Your Pocket Day. So on that's a Thursday, I believe. Someone check the math. Yeah, carry a poem and take it out and read it to people, again, whether they like it or not. It's good for them. It's good for us to hear beautiful language, and although it has maybe taken a hit for many decades, truth even, I think, can be found. I know one man's truth, etc. But or just for fun. Well, there's a lot more information to say about, oh, I was going to read this. It's way too long. And I don't like this poem. So we're going to move from the 19th century. 19th century poetry, I don't know. The lives of the poets are a little bit more interesting to me than the work sometimes. And, you know, it's just iambic pentameter and forced rhymes. And I'm a child of, or perhaps a grandchild of the modernist ideas of poetry. I found a site on the web that had some poems, modern, if not Unitarian poets, at least poems that expressed Unitarian values. Jennifer Bosveld, some little town in Ohio, published a book back in the mid-90s, I think, 95, called Modern Unitarian Universalist Poets. None of these people are in there. Very famous poem now by Mary Oliver called Wild Geese, title of one of her collections. Good advice, I think. You do not have to be good. You don't have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things. And that, of course, supports the ideal of the interconnectedness of life. Here's not a whole poem, but just a few lines from Mary Oliver. What is your plan to... Tell me, what is your plan to do with your wild and precious life? I like that idea, that the wildness even in our own heart. Listen to your breathing, just a little, and calling it a life. Listen, are you breathing just a little and calling it life? Listen, are you breathing just a little and calling it life? Instructions for living a life. Pay attention, be astonished, tell about it. I think it's important that we share those. Has anybody seen the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow? I have. Seriously, I was not on drugs. I was walking down Piedra Street, turned onto Grant Street. It had been sprinkling a little, and I saw a rainbow, and it was touching down right around the Cotton Street overpass. And where the rainbow touched down, there was this golden light springing up. And at that point, I'd just become involved with Kathy, and she had turned me on to some ideas by some poets that I came to love. And one was Diane Bukowski, I think it was. Anyway, it was the idea of poetry being moments and expressions of light. So I was working on a book of light, and I saw this rainbow and this golden light where it touched down, and I said, I want to go stand in that light. So when I got to the end of the block, and I started turning down, the rainbow was now touching down about Texas Street, not at Cotton Street overpass. And I understood, well, that's why you can't catch the leprechaun and get the gold. But it was a real thing. Apparently, as the drop of rain comes closer to the ground, it flattens, and there is something called saturational luminance, I believe, luminance. I could be wrong about this, but I had to explain it to myself because people don't get to see these things. I felt the dew fall one morning. Well, the most beautiful moment of my life was being present at the birth of our daughter Sophia. If you have had that experience, you could die now. That's how I felt. I mean, that is the ultimate, that's the biological imperative, right? Make another of yourself. Afterwards, they have their own ideas, I guess. Someone I loved once gave me a box full of darkness. It took me years to understand that this too was a gift. Okay, that's Mary Oliver. Another poet whom I really like, Wendell Berry, and I've liked for probably over 40 years. First became aware of him in his book about the mad farmer. I think it was called The Art of Farming, and the character was the mad farmer. The mad farmer says, never have so much stuff that you're glad that your barn burnt down. That's Wendell Berry. So here's a poem by Wendell Berry. I go among trees and sit still. I go among trees and sit still. All my stirring becomes quiet around me, like circles of water, like circles on water. My task lie in their places where I left them asleep like cattle. Then what I am afraid of comes. I live for a while in its sight. What I fear in it leaves it, and the fear of it leaves me. It sings, and I hear its song. It's a beautiful blues. That's my adding to it. This is another poet, Peter Mulvey, A Better Way to Go. I like the kind of discursive yet insightfulness of this poem. I just came from the guru's website. I'm still washing off the smell. Man, why don't he just go on TV and tell us all, give up or go to hell? I was only looking if they had something to say. Lately, it has been hard to get through my day. I was looking for something, I just don't know. I've been looking for a better way to go. And that's my life. I know it is for many of you. And one more by former Poet Laureate of the United States, maybe 8-10 years ago, Billy Collins. I really like him. I recommend him. He's easily accessible, I think, and his lines crackle with humor. This is called Directions. You know the brick path in back of the house, the one you see from the kitchen window, the one that bends around the far end of the garden where all the yellow primroses are. And you know how if you leave the path and walk up into the woods, you come to a heap of rocks, probably pushed down during the horrors of the Ice Age, and a grove of tall hemlocks, dark green now against the lighted brown fallen leaves. And further on, you know the small footbridge with the broken railing. And if you go beyond that, you arrive at the bottom of that Sheep's Head Hill. Well, if you start climbing, and you might have to grab hold of a sapling when the going gets steep, you will eventually come to a long stone ridge with a border of pine trees, which is as high as you can go, and a good enough place to stop. Kathy looked in the hymnal and found for me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 songs by poets that have been set to music. There is one by a Russian poet that I really admire, Anna Akhmatova, called "All My Memories of Love," All My Memories of Love. And then by W.H. Auden, "When Shall We Learn?" And it's been 75 years, W.H. and was it Winston Hugh? By Sarah Teasdale, "Life Has Loveliness to Sell." I would disagree with that kind of commercialization of life. And then by Wendell Berry, the poet whom I just read a bit ago, "Oh, Slowly, Slowly." And William Blake, to see the world in a grain of sand, etc. And I don't know that there are many faiths that outrightly honor poetry and would give time to a poet to wax poetic about poetry. And I appreciate that, and thank you for asking me and allowing me to share. Here's my rose petal in the ocean. Was it real well? In the Grand Canyon. A couple of poems. It's a prayer. Bless me with your bold face. Bendíceme con tu cara atrevida. Soothe me with your sweet water. Aliviame con tu agua dulce. Lay me in your brave valley. Colócame en tu valle valiente. Take me to your earthen arms. Abárcame a tus brazos de barro. Sway me with your grand smile. Méseme con tu gran sonrisa. Lull me with your clear song. Arrúllame con tu canción clara. Shake me in your deep love. Sacúdame en tu amor profundo. And take me to your deep heart. Abárcame a tu corazón profundo, tu corazón lleno, tu corazón de amor. And I think the correct response was, amen, brother. This is called A New America. Don't know about the end of the world. Locals say you can see it from here. It's in the blood-red rocks glowing in the flat light of sunset on the white-faced moon rising above the peaks in still blue sky. The body of a deeper, denser America. America in the womb of the future, now crowning into light, red of a small ruptured vessel on the doctor's white tunic and a blue infant gasping for breath. That's America. Almost a year ago, I had another crisis, and they put me on happy pills, and I'm really happy. I had been angry for many years, and of course, we always, hurt the ones we love. But right before I went on the antidepressants, happy pills, I had been thinking about happiness. The word, the name Felix in Latin means happy. Feliz Navidad. So I wrote this book called, little chapbook called The Book of Felix. Well, anyway, here's the first one. He was named for happiness, so I asked for a single word. He prayed, save me from my tongue. He said, there are not words enough. When you ask, you do not listen. No one carries my words away. He said, do as you see me do. What have I seen you do? Answered, precisely, nothing. If I told you to look into the sun, how would you understand I speak of your beating heart? The thou in the wilderness is not the beloved waiting, but your own heart beguiling. Your breath in the ear, essence in the nose, sweetness on the tongue. A word knocks at the hard door, dusty and wild from the wilderness, only longing to speak of silence. Symphonic silence called void. Phonic and resonant, echoing in the marrow. Asked, do you trust me? I said, of course, like the firmament. He said, forget happiness to find it. And then this past break over the New Year, this one, the book of ELK, which are my initials, Eugene Lloyd Keller, and the Book of Elk, which has always been a kind of iconic totemic figure for me. I love the flute sound of the elk call. And when I say love, I mean there's something calling me there. I feel it in many of my chakras. A friend of mine who teaches American Sign Language told me ELK in that community stands for extra linguistic knowledge. I like that. So this poem from this collection is called Lunar Eclipse, Winter Solstice. I pull a hair from my beard on the longest night in a year of years. I pull a hair, I pull another hair. Each hair a prayer, I pull a hair. For the moon has gone red over the frozen and flooded north. Each hair a sacrifice to faith in renaissance, in rebirth, in spring, when the sun will thaw and evaporate. But the red moon over America, where I stand between Saul and ice on the longest night in a year of tears, gives the season a sepia touch, makes me question this vision, asks me for one more sacrifice, until Jean of El Paso is hairless as a sacred dog, who can only keep you warm until the moon brings spring again. Thank you so much.